From the Army, only about 45% go to the Medical Readiness Detachment. Mr. Daniel Long was a part of this percent in his time in the Medical Readiness Detachment. Mr. Long served from 2004 to 2024. He has gained much knowledge and lessons that have contributed to his life greatly. He became an E6 over his time in the military. He has 2 kids, a dog, and a wife. He has many friends from over the years as well as in the service. Mr. Long was in the Medical Readiness Detachment at Fort Indiantown Gap, earning the Pennsylvania National Guard Generation Thomas J. Stewart Medal. Mr. Long was born in Lebanon City. His mother's name is Lori Long and his father's name is Leon Long. He has 2 younger brothers, Kyle and Nicholas. His father was thrilled with the idea of Mr. Long joining the service, but his mother was not. Mr. Long had to convince his mother to sign the necessary paperwork. He attended DeVry University for 1 semester and then went to the work field that he is in today. Mr. Long worked various places before the military. Some of these places were the Richland Pool and Hershey Park. Mr. Long had volunteered to start his service. He said,
Can you tell us about when you went into the military?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It says, where were you drafted or did you volunteer?
I was not drafted. I did volunteer. I enlisted on my own. I originally was interested in being a combat medic, but my recruiter had convinced me that there was another job out there and I liked working with my hands and mechanics, and decided fixing medical equipment was still in the medical field, as I was an EMT at that time, and decided to give that a try, and I love it. It's everything I do today.
What specific?
Mr. Long joined originally to get money for his schooling, but instead right after went into the job field. Mr. Long enlisted when he was a junior in high school. He had to leave his wife and kids sometimes, which played a huge role in his retirement. Mr. Long stated,
there weren't too many times that I had to leave for an extended period of time, but definitely was a large reasoning why I decided to retire when I retired.
How did it feel to leave?
Mr. Long entered the Pennsylvania Army Guard because his father served 23 years there. He also talked about the vigorous training he went through, and he enjoyed it in the end. It taught him much self-control and ability to learn basic abilities that have affected him later on in life. Mr. Long said,
I would say my most vivid time, it was doing the final ruck march that is the end of basic training. So you march, I'm going to get it wrong, you do a ruck, a really long distance, and then you cross over like a finish line. And that whole time that we were doing that ruck, it was lightning, it was thunderstorms, it was to find out a tornado landed a mere mile away from where we were while we were out there and had absolutely no idea it was happening. I mean, we could feel things, like we could feel the wind and all that fun stuff. It actually destroyed the parade field we're going to be graduating on a few days later.
This was a vivid memory for Mr. Long, from the excitement and the relief of retiring. Also the feeling of knowing he was so close to a tornado without even knowing. Mr. Long had short periods of time when he had to leave, but other than that, he got to see his family. Mr. Long was in the Medical Readiness Detachment, which he had to go through specialized training for. He went to a biomed program at his AIT. This was the only requirement when he enlisted. When he first entered the military, he had no training, but they sent him home to the Medical Readiness Detachment, where he did nothing until he had all of his certifications. He was stationed at Shepherd's Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas for specialized training. This base was a school that is a tri-service for Army, military, and Air Force. After leaving specialized training, Mr. Long went to Fort Indiantown Gap, but only for short periods of time since his job required him to go from place to place. He never stayed in one single unit over his 20 years. He was stationed at Fort Sam Houston for basic training. This is the point where he had to choose what he wanted to do in the Guard. He was given the opportunity to reclass and go from an E4 to an E6. He decided to reclass and become a patient admin identifier. Mr. Long's favorite place that he was stationed was Shepherd's Air Force Base. He was stationed here right after high school, so it was the first experience he had from being away from his parents. He stated that it was very fun and exciting just being with his friends. Mr. Long's primary job was being a biomed tech and fixing the medical equipment. He did his unit's property book, and he was the one to make sure everything was being done correctly. A typical day at Fort Indiantown Gap for Mr. Long was arriving in the morning and having a briefing of knowing how many soldiers were getting their physicals. He would also take care of any VIPs for things like flight physicals or other random things that didn't fall into another category. He would walk around from medical department to medical department to make sure everything is working properly. He would sit in supply buildings to prepare the needed supplies for the day. Mr. Long recalled that supplies seemed to go missing from month to month. He would also, at the end of the day, go check on the supply and fix anything that broke. Mr. Long made all kinds of friends during his time in the Guard. Many people you don't just meet within your field, you meet people as they come and go. Some are outside the state and others are even out of the country. In order to communicate with his family and friends back home, Daniel had to write letters and calling cards because cell phones weren't a thing, only payphones. He got a phone call when he first arrived at Fort Jackson, and his next call was the day before graduation. A lot of other people made phone calls in between, but he was never awarded the opportunity. In AIT for recreation, which was his training, he would go to the pool halls and shoot pool and walk around the mall a lot because that's what his and his friends were all doing because they were all underage.
Anyway, we did what was considered normal kid stuff back then.
One of the humorous things that happened while in the Guard was that an individual who was not smart at all was trying to come back to reception where Long was at the time.
Was asking people like, what else can I do? He's really bummed, he failed out, he didn't know what else to do. And somebody suggested that he did mid-flight missile repair. And I laughed so hard at that because he took that serious. And he goes, that sounds wild. Like, I could, you mean like actually fix missiles? I'm like, yeah. And then he ran off and went and told the drill sergeant said that he went to do mid-flight missile repair and didn't understand what those words meant.
The best part of Mr. Long's service experience was the honor of enlisting in the Guard and serving. There were plenty of times he didn't want to stick it out for 20 years, but he kept convincing himself to stay.
What was required. I owe my entire life at the moment, career field and everything, to the Army, so the least I could do was give them 20 years of my time.
To become an SSG, Mr. Long never really had much competition to make it to an E6 because his job was so low density, meaning that there were very few people to do it. Most of his 20 years, he was the only person in the entire Pennsylvania National Guard that had that job as a qualification. With this, he didn't really have much responsibility increases. It was just the title, but a lot of what he did as a staff sergeant, he already was doing as an E5. In the medical readiness department, he did anything that was necessary, from fixing medical equipment to ordering supplies and covering the supplies building to issuing supplies to running ranges.
We would borrow buses or we borrowed a box truck one time, like a bread truck, if you know what a bread truck is. Borrowed that one time, and we would transport people out to the ranges, and I would volunteer to drive vehicles because everybody else had more of an important role in trainings than I did, because they would train to be combat medics, or they were combat medics and they needed refresher training to go along with their doctors that needed to do things to keep their trainings up and running. So anything that I could do, I would do.
Mr. Long felt good to finally come home because he knew the next chapter of his life was to find a job. He knew after graduating he wanted to do something with fixing equipment, and that was probably the next hardest step, trying to find a place to work. To achieve the Thomas J. Stewart Medal, you don't have to do much to earn it. The only way to really earn this is to just give your time. The military service affected Mr. Long's normal life by not being free some weekends, even when he really wanted to be hanging out with his family.
Plan for that ahead of time, that there were some weekends where you want to hang out with family or friends or stuff like that and you simply can't, or there's an event you can't go to because you have that commitment.
For Mr. Long, being in the Guard during COVID definitely changed a lot. At the beginning of COVID, a lot of the units in the PA Guard would do viral drills or not have drills at all because of this virus. During COVID, Mr. Long had a role of housing all the vaccinations for the state of Pennsylvania National Guard.
When they start rolling out the COVID vaccine, they needed a place to store it.
In order to store the vaccines, they needed to store it in a freezer temperatures. So when they had more vaccines come in, then they were stored in a non-official vaccine refrigerator. Mr. Long was in charge of determining storage needs and where they could find it in the Guard. They had a small tabletop freezer, which was okay at the beginning of the pandemic, but as it went on, they had to buy more vaccine freezers to store them for the government. The food during COVID was mostly all boxed lunches. They had no hot meals. Mr. Long and his friends would all bring in food because all restaurants were closed. During COVID, they still had to face-to-face interactions, but had to wear masks and keep their distances as best as they could. When asked about a message Mr. Long would leave for his future generations to hear when listening to this interview, Mr. Long said,
I would say serve your country. I think it is a very, very important role in both men and women to serve their country at some point in time. The military taught me a lot of things that I do on a day-to-day routine, and I think it's a good foundation to provide for a family or raise a family moving forward.
the lesson Mr. Long would like us to know as students is to not be afraid to volunteer because it is extremely important.
Get your hands dirty, do what's necessary, and you'll have great experiences. It's my experience in the Guard itself. While I didn't have an extraordinary experience, I didn't deploy, I didn't do all the things that most people think of as somebody that has served in the military, but I still feel like I contributed my part in serving those that were getting ready to come and go.
A fond memory from when Mr. Long was serving was when Mr. Long was at his first AIT.
There was a period of time when I was first at AIT that Hurricane Katrina came up and raised havoc on that part of the U.S. And there were a lot of military bases that were being evacuated at that time. And one in particular situation that had happened is there's a really good friend of mine from high school that he was being evacuated from whatever Air Force. I think he was at Keesler Air Force Base, and he was coming to Shepherd Air Force Base. He called me, because we didn't, well, I guess we could have texted back then, but he called me and said, "Hey, are you at Shepherd Air Force Base?" And I said, "Yes." He's like, "I am too. Can I meet up with you?" I was like, "Absolutely." And at that point in time, I was over there for several months, so I haven't seen anybody from home. So it was kind of like really, really exciting. He was in training as well at Keesler, but they were being evacuated. So he showed up. He gave me one more phone call after they landed on Shepherd Air Force Base and said, "Hey, I'm at this chow hall. can you come to me? I said, sure. It ended up being the chow hall, literally across the street from the dorm that I was living in at the time. And I walked over there, and something that I didn't see very often were Air Force drill instructors, and they were in the chow hall because they were all being shipped to Shepherd Air Force Base with the drill sergeants. And I saw my friend, and I sat down in my civilian clothes and had dinner with him, and it was probably one of the most favorite moments of being like seeing somebody from home. It was awesome. So he and I had this whole meal. The drill instructors were just sharking us, just trying to figure out why I, as in civilian clothes, sitting with this guy that just showed up. He couldn't understand what was going on, didn't question anything, and it was a great time. So I shared a meal, and we parted ways at that point in time, and then reconvened back here at home, which was absolutely awesome. And one of the coolest parts of that story is later on to find out it is my wife's brother that I was sitting with. So, I mean, I knew of my wife at that time. We obviously weren't married. We weren't even dating. It was just, he and I were friends. So, later on to marrying his wife, his sister, that was pretty cool. So, I can share that memory with her.
Lastly, Mr. Long's favorite food in the military was chili mac.
Most MREs are very terrible to try to choke down, but the chili mac is got to be a favorite. Most of my military meals were on the Air Force Base, and the Air Force has it made. They have like private chefs that cook you food. It was a good place for me to be for a whole year and eat. I ate very, very well.
Finally, we would like to thank Mr. Long for sharing all about his time in the military and for serving 20 years for the Pennsylvania Army National Guard and the Medical Readiness Detachment. Again, thank you, Mr. Long, for allowing us to do this interview, for us to learn more about you and every part of your military experience.